All right. So today we are going to look at our third topic, which is on states, the concept states, ladies and gentlemen, states. You will recall that we mentioned in our previous lecture that the traditional focus of comparative politics has been on the study of states. And the kind of comparative or the form of comparative analysis that compares states or countries, how do you call that form? How do you call that form? What type of analysis is that?
Comparative national analysis.
Comparative national analysis. Thank you. Or the cross-national analysis. Great. And we have argued that the traditional subject matter or focus of comparative politics has been on the states, comparing how politics is done across states, comparing how different jurisdictions power is exercised or acquired or maintained. In short, how politics occurs across states. That has been the traditional subject matter of comparative politics. But you also recall that we mentioned that what are some of these entities? Hello. What are some of these entities? You can make reference to the 5 I's. Yes. Are we there?
Hello, Prof.
Yes.
Please, I think you need to off your mic was muted, so we didn't hear what the question was.
Yes, please. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, I'm saying that the traditional focus has been on the study of the states, but
Sir, can you?
Yes, so your network.
hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me now? Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Good. Okay, so you can hear me now. Right, good. All right. So I was saying that the traditional focus of comparative politics has been on the study of states. And I was also arguing that we have mentioned in this class that the period after the World War II Okay, I mean the behavioral era. The attention of comparativists was drawn to other dimensions, such that we were not only focused on the state, but some other dimensions. I wanted you to mention some of these dynamics. Yes, you can make reference to the 5 eyes. Yes. What are some of these? Okay, Collins.
Institutions.
Okay, good. Institutions. Emanuela. All right. So, since the study of state has been our traditional focus, it is imperative on us to understand comprehensively what states are, okay? What states are, and also how the state operates, how the state evolved, and the various varieties in which they can be found. Anything about the states is crucial because they help us in systematically comparing states so that we will not end up in the usual refrain that one is comparing oranges to apples. But when we understand states, then you even know how to select your cases for the purposes of systematic comparison. States vary in various dimensions, and we will talk about some of those dimensions with regards to how they vary. States have never been homogeneous. Some are very populous and occupy huge territories. Others have tiny population and also occupy very smaller territories. These cannot be the same. Some states are very rich, others are also poor. You remember even the Cold War typology when we mentioned some were first world and then others were third world countries. States also vary with regards to political authority. And as scholars of comparative politics, we are going to learn about states, drawing some kind of a comparison amongst some of them. This is what we seek to do in the course of this lecture 3 on states. Before I even proceed, let me ask you this question. My dear friends, how many states do we have in the whole wide world? I want some of you to try. How many states do we have in the whole wide world? Yes. Now, when you look at the cover page, okay, yes, Elinam, Aju, good.
Yes, Prof. We have 193 states, please.
Okay, Elinam has mentioned 193. Any other? How many states do we have in the whole wide world? Okay, Collins.
195.
100 and
95.
195, 195. Any other view? I want a third view. Someone has written in the chat comment. Okay, Jessica, 195. All right. Any other? You all agree? 193. Okay, 193, 19. Hey, 195 no, seems to be more. Okay, so most of you are typing. Okay, my dear friends. So you see, as scholars of comparative politics, and that is why this particular topic is very important, very essential. When you are asked this simple question, its answer is not simple. The answer to this simple question is very complicated. And there is no single answer, my dear friends. You cannot simply say there are 193 states. You can also not simply say there are 195 states. Then the question is, what is the answer, Professor Yeboah Assiamah? What is the answer? Now, as comparativists, today we are going to learn more about states. And you will get to know that different states do exist. So the 193 that we are quick to quote, or the 195 that we are quick to quote, these numbers do not depict truly or will not give the comprehensive picture of how many states exist in the whole wide world. Now, when you are asked this question, the simple answer you give is that it depends. What did I say? What is the answer?
It depends.
It depends. And so the answer to this question requires what? Vivid description. It requires vivid description, my dear friends. If you say 195, you are right. It depends on how you describe it. If you say 193, you are also right. Depends on how you describe it. If you even have a number less than 193, you may also be right. Depends on how you describe it. If you also even say there are more than 200 states, you are also right. Depends on how you describe it, ladies and gentlemen. Are we there? So towards the end of this session, we are going to answer this particular question by vividly describing. But here I'm telling you that there is no simple answer. It depends. And then you follow by what? Describing. Describing from a larger number, and then you are reducing to 195, then reducing to 193. And some scholars even go to the extent of taking some 4 states out of these 193, then arriving at 189. But as I say, it all boils down to description. Scholars like Haig et al., 2016, Haig, Harrop, and McCormick. These scholars even argue that the 193 members who are members of the United Nations, 4 of them, strictly speaking, do not have all the key features of the state worth its sought. And so, for practical reasons, these 4 states should be taken out of the 193, then we arrive at 189. But everything depends on our description, my dear friends. Good. Any question before we proceed? Any question before we proceed? So very good. Even at Archibald, you see, Archibald has come with some of the description. So you can say that, oh, we have 195 members of the U, and even with the 195, 2 of them are just observers. And so when you take the 2 out, we have 193. That's why I said that if you say 195, you are right. If you say 193, you are right. If you also even say more than 200, you are also right. Okay? Very well. There are 195 sovereign states in the world comprising 100. So Foster, this is a simple Google answer or even ChatGPT answer. That is why you are a student of comparative politics, right? You will get to know that even the 195 members, we have more to it. Are we good to go? So go to the chat box. I have posted a link to a YouTube channel for this course where we will be exploring more of these salient issues about comparative politics, various relevant topics where I will do detailed assessment. So I encourage all of you to go to the page and then subscribe, be on the page, okay? So that anytime I make some of these relevant materials, you are able to grasp it. Even when you are sleeping, when you are on your bed, you can just, be learning at all times. Distance will not be a barrier. All right. So today, these are the things we're going to look at. Conceptualizing the state and its features, distinguishing state from government, and how the state and modern state emerged. Look at the Peace of Westphalia, era of warfare and welfare, and then we do our comparative assessment here. The diversity of states. How do states differ in terms of population, political authority, and by income? We will compare states. We'll do comparative assessment. My understanding is that you learned about states in level 100, but here we do a more comparative assessment of the states, which will mean that we will build upon what you learned in level 100 by taking it from comparative angle. All right. Any question, my dear friends, before we set the ball rolling? What is a state? What is a state? Elinam. Yes, Ellie.
Yes, Prof.
Yes.
A state is the permanent political organization of a country.
Permanent political organization of a country. Fantastic, good. All right. Any other? Foster. Okay, you have given us a scholarly definition by Lasky. A state is a territorial society made up of a government and its citizens, which exercises supreme authority over all individuals and institutions within its territory. So that is Harold Lasky. Fantastic. And the definition encompasses the key features of a state. Now, the state, as rightly mentioned by Lasky, it is also the legal and political authority of a territory. The legal and political authority of a territory containing a population and marked by borders. What it simply tells you is that a state has a territory, okay? It has a territory, with defined what borders. That is why states have their maps. And the maps depict the scope or the jurisdiction of the state, your marked territory. That shows the extent of your jurisdiction. State as a population, it is that legal and political authority within the territory. Now, the main textbook that you are using for this course, Hague et al. 2016, that's Hague, Harrop, and McCormick 2016. Their definition is very phenomenal, and I want you to take note of it. They state, their definition or how they conceptualize the state clearly delineates the state from government. So it makes it easier for us to even notice the difference between state and government. The state is the political authority. The state is the political authority of which government is the managing authority. And so when you take a territory or the borders, take a territory, now the territory has a legal and political authority. And that legal and political authority is what we call the state. That power arrangement so established is the state. And the state is abstract. Government is the managing authority. The government becomes the manager or the managing authority of the state. The state is regarded as both sovereign. By sovereign, we mean it is that all-powerful entity that has the monopoly of the use of force over any individual, any entity, or subject within its territory. The state is sovereign, meaning it is all that powerful, has the final say on all subjects, all matters. The state is legitimate, is seen as or regarded as legitimate. So it means it has recognition by citizens of the states and governments of other states. And this is what? Very political in nature. Okay, very political in nature. All right, that is the state. Connotes the political authority of which government is the managing authority. Now take it to be this way. Now, mention any company you know in Ghana. Oh, no, okay, mention any bank that you know in Ghana. Yes, Archibald, any bank that you know in Ghana?
ABSA.
ABSA Bank, right? So take the bank as a company. Once the bank is registered, okay, under the Companies Act, the bank is a legal entity. It's a legal personality. It can sue and be sued, but the bank is abstract. It is incorporated as a legal entity, legal personality. But the bank cannot talk. It is abstract. It is managed by its what? Managers or board. And so now then the bank is more or less like the state, very abstract in nature. Its managing authority, you have the MDs, it has a board. And so then that becomes the government. If the bank will recruit people Who does the recruitment on behalf of the bank? Yes, Sheriff. If the bank will employ people, who does the employment on behalf of the bank?
I think the HR.
The HR. The HR is part of what? The management. Okay? If the bank will sue people, or if the bank will sue customers for their loan, who does that? Who sue on behalf of the bank? Who sue? The management. Okay? And so now let's bring it back to our state. The state is that entity, the legal and political authority within the territory. But the state is managed by government. Government is the managing authority. And the state is sovereign, very powerful, legitimate, well recognized. According to Max Weber, the state involves a human community that has successfully claimed the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. So the state is sovereign within its borders or territory. It has the monopoly of the use of physical force, legitimate use of physical force. Once the state passes a law, every subject within the territory is obliged to obey. Okay, everyone has to obey. Anyone that goes contrary to lawfully sanctioned activities of the state can use what? Legitimate force to compel people to act or to be restrained from acting. That is why when a court of competent jurisdiction gives an order that, hey, do not go to that land. Now, the court is an agent of the state. When properly constituted and with competent jurisdiction, if they give orders, the orders must be obeyed. They say, stop work. There is an injunction on that or land. You cannot go there. And if you go there, the state will use legitimate force to compel you to refrain. All right, that is that. Let's look at features of the state. Ladies and gentlemen, features of a state. Now, when we talk of features of a state, I'm going to use ideas from international law and political science to address this. So today I am wearing two hats as a professor of political science and as a student of international law, so that you will get a very comprehensive understanding of this idea of states. Are we ready? Good. So you see, in international law, the sources of law, one of them is what we call treaty. Treaty, convention, protocol, charter. It can be called any of these names, whether convention, treaty, charter, protocol, whatever. But all what it means is that it involves agreements by what? States. States have agreed on some kind of actions, and that bind members who are signatories or who have agreed to these kind of arrangements. So treaty is one of the sources of law as international law. So there is this convention called Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. And this is a treaty signed in 1933 in Montevideo, Uruguay. And this convention sets the basic or the classic criteria for statehood at international law. These 4 criteria or features include what? A permanent population. A state must have a population, a stable community of people. This one is easier to get. Once you have a territory, at least you have what? A people, stable community of people. Now, a state must have a defined territory. So today you are studying international law. Defined territory. That is a territory over which the state claims authority. It has what? Marked borders, exact borders. Then also, a state must have a government that is an effective political authority, exercising control. Doesn't matter whether it is democratic or authoritarian. Once there is what? An effective political authority that exercises control. And the last one is the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Okay, that is when you are independent in conducting your foreign affairs. Once you meet these basic 4 criteria, then that entity can declare itself as a state. And in international law, that is referred to as the declarative theory of statehood. Once an entity meets these classic criteria, it can declare itself as a state. Are we together? So this is Montevideo, Uruguay. Montevideo. But tell me, do you agree? So, but that is the declarative theory of statehood. Once we meet these basic criteria of a permanent population, defined territory, effective government, and then the capacity, you are a state. So Article 3 of the convention says that a state's existence is independent of recognition by other states. And that is the declarative theory of statehood. Once you meet these criteria, I mean, whether you are recognized by other states or the international community, it is irrelevant. This theory states that once you meet that, you are a state. That is why I mentioned that it is not easy to answer the question, how many states do we have? Google can easily give you, ChatGPT can easily give you the number. But if you are a comparativist who has a comprehensive understanding of states, drawing from different angles, then it will be difficult to give a straightforward answer of how many states that would do exist. Maybe you may be forced to ask, well, by states, Are you referring to the declarative theory of statehood or some other theory? Are you referring to de facto states or de jure states? Then it is difficult to give a straightforward answer. You need to describe, or you need to carve a scope for yourself in order to answer the question using that or lens or frame. You cannot be categorical without giving a premise. Give a premise and then you answer. Otherwise, it will not be easy for you. So that is Article 3, which sets out the declarative theory of statehood. Once you meet the 4 criteria, whether or not other states recognize you, you have declared that you are a state, and so it is. But there is another theory at international law called the constitutive theory of statehood. Constitutive theory of statehood, which says that, the fact that you meet the 4 criteria by the Montevideo Convention, population, territory, you have a government, then you can enter into arrangements with some foreign countries, like say independence. Even if you meet all these 4 criteria, you are not automatically what? A state. No, you are not a state. You need to be admitted into the table of states. So the constitutive theory of statehood argues that no, an entity becomes a state only when it is recognized by existing states. You need to be ushered, you need to be welcomed, you need to be accepted, you need to be recognized by what? Existing states before you are able to claim that you are a state. Therefore, according to this theory, recognition is therefore constitutive. You need to be constituted. So that kind of recognition creates statehood, but not what merely declaratory. Not you merely or declaring. Now, this theory has certain strengths or advantages. It reflects diplomatic reality. Yes, that it gives a practical reality to diplomatic relations. You cannot say you are a state and then you are an island. Other states don't recognize you. Then what are you? You cannot have diplomatic relations, and so clearly then for practical purposes and analysis, your statehood will be questioned. And this theory explains why recognition matters in practice. If you say you are a state but nobody recognizes you, how do you then operate? If you say you are a tertiary institution because you have lecturers, you have classrooms, you have laboratories, you have library, you have books, and so you have declared that you are a university, you are a tertiary institution. You can have your students attend lectures, have some people made lecturers to go and teach, have your students do exams, write exams, examine. But if you do not have accreditation, okay, you are not accredited, you are not properly constituted as a university or a tertiary institution, then all that you are doing will be in vain. A time will come and then your student certificate will be questioned, becoming null and void. So recognition matters in practice. Once you have all the criteria, if you want to establish a tertiary institution, then you go to the regulator, GTEC, for them to accredit you. So recognition matters. Now, let's apply that to the international system. Recognition matters. But another challenge with this is that it makes statehood dependent on political decisions. So a question that students normally ask is that, Professor, if you say that one state meets the 4 basic criteria set out by the Montevideo Convention on the rights and duties of states, then by the declarative theory, they can assume a statehood. Why is it that we then say that there are only 193 states or 195 states membership of the United Nations? The answer is simple. Becoming a state is also what? Political in nature. It is political in nature. And as political scientists, when we say politics, how do we define politics? I want you to use the conceptualization by Harold Laswell. How does he define politics? Yes. How does Laswell define politics?
Struggle for power.
Also Samuel. How does Laswell define politics? Yes. Harold Laswell.
Struggle for power.
No, I'll not take that.
Who gets what, when, and how?
Okay, I'll take that. Take it again.
Who gets what, when, and how?
All right, thank you, Abraham. Who gets what, when, and how? Who gets what, when, and how? So, even though you have all the 4 features, for you to be admitted, it is also political. And you know that politics is about who gets what, when, and how. And so it's a political decision. So even though there could be several states, you see, when you take the membership of the UN, you have what, 195 or 193, okay? Because the 195, even 2 of them are having only observer status, telling you that it is a political decision, the recognition. Any question before we proceed? Let me check. Okay, Foster has a question. If the state of Palestine has a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and is recognized by many countries, why is it not universally recognized as a sovereign state? What prevents it from attaining full statehood under international law? Then Sharif has answered, in some states it doesn't exist. And so, Foster, that is what I am saying. It is political. And you see, when we say something is political, it's about interest, okay? And you are a comparativist. We mentioned that why is it that some states have full recognitions, others do not have full recognition. interest comes in, the international environment. So if you take Palestine, for example, there are some powerful states that object, okay, to the decision of constituting Palestine as like a full state. And so because of this interest, preventing it from attaining full statehood, well, and you see the UN is at crossroad. When you read international law, you will get to know that even international law, is it a law that can it bite? Is it law or it is some kind of what arrangement? There are some weaknesses with the international arrangement. It's about interests of the powerful states, my dear friends. And so the UN as it is, if there are some powerful states objecting to a particular state attaining full statehood, well, the UN will be constrained. Say, okay, Palestine, you know what? You can be attending UN meetings, but you are just what? An observer state, okay? You are an observer because the thing is highly political and it's difficult to sometimes resolve some of these, okay? And you know these powerful states. For example, Taiwan used to be a full state. If you take the constitutive theory, it used to be a full state. But we woke up one day around 1971, and then Taiwan is no longer a state by the constitutive theory. Simply because a very powerful state called the People's Republic of China, PRC, objects to this. And will argue that any other state that recognizes Taiwan as a separate state, as a sovereign state, will have PRC to contend with. And you know that, you see, the China you know called PRC. What's the full meaning of PRC? What is PRC?
People's Republic of China.
The People's Republic of China, PRC. Now, let me tell you the name of Taiwan, its official name. In the local parlance, you will say that Nidin a Eshe Adakamu, its name in the box, Nidin Eshe Adakamu. You see, Taiwan is called Republic of China. It is the original China. It is called Republic of China. And then by 1949, through a revolution, the people will revolt against the states and will form People's Republic of China. Whilst the original China, you know, with its institutions, they will run and settle on an island, okay? And then we'll call it Taiwan. But that was the corridor of power, the states of China. And so even though they have moved from mainland China to an island, then they call it Taiwan there. Now PRC still sees Taiwan as part of it. And so well before 1971, Taiwan was a state on its own because it had full US backing, right? US backing. Superpower at the time, superpower, okay? Superpower at the time. But in the 70s, you know, when China was becoming so powerful an entity, and then having the gravitas in the international scene. And so Taiwan will lose its global recognition as a state, properly constituted. And so if you take the declarative theory, you say Taiwan is a state, but by constitutive theory, it doesn't have the recognition It lost that recognition. So it's no longer member of the UN. Are we together? Good. So statehood is a matter of politics at the international scene. So now I'm putting on the international law cap, my dear friends. Now, I've told you, click on the link. I've shared the link on the chat. Yes, in the chat box. Please subscribe to the Comparative Politics YouTube channel so that everywhere you are, even when you are sleeping, you can have access to comparative politics. Good. Now let's come to politics. You see, Hague, Harrop, and McCormick in 2016, Hague et al., simply put, 2016, they argue that states have 4 defining features. These are political scientists. And so, their definition or how they regard states, and you saw their definition. Political authority, of which government is the managing authority. Okay? Political authority with government as the managing authority. It has legitimacy and sovereignty. And so these 4 defining qualities, population, legitimacy, that's what, the recognition, and sovereignty. And so you see their definition is talking about the constitutive theory of statehood. Talks about legitimacy, talks about sovereignty. Now, the modern state, as we find it, was born in Europe. Those of you who have been asking for areas, exam areas, or areas for further discussion, this is one of the areas, one of the questions that you are likely to meet. The modern state was born in Europe, and its form was exported to the rest of the world, okay, by imperial powers, colonialists. Colonial powers like Britain, France, and Spain. They exported the modern state system to other parts of the world. For example, here, in our parts of the world, the notion of statehood wasn't part of our activity or even nomenclature or our practice. But the colonial powers brought that idea. And so at independence, the political authority took the system of the modern statehood with those sort of structures of a state, having government, constitutions, modern state institutions, okay, as such. Otherwise, these things were not with us. My dear friends, I have mentioned early on that states are formally equal, okay? So let's say at law or at international law, you will say that states are formally equal. But clearly, we are aware that by practice or in praxis, states are not equal. They vary. States vary in several dimensions in terms of their size. Some states are very populous, okay? Some states are very populous in terms of their population. And some are very huge in terms of their territory, or if you like, in terms of their borders or their boundaries. Some are so huge. Others are so tiny, very, very minute, that we call them micro-states. And my dear friends, I tell you, there are some states whose population are far, far, far less than the population of the University of Ghana. Students only. If you take the students, the University of Ghana, there are some states, their population cannot even match the population of University of Ghana. Students only. I'm not even including staff. And there are even yet some states whose population is less than students of Poly 214, my dear friends. The population of the state is less than students of comparative politics. And so when we are looking at comparative assessment of states, we should bear in mind that states vary in terms of their size. In terms of their economic importance, states also vary. The World Bank uses what we call gross national income per capita. And based on that, they classify states into 4 based on your national income as divided by your total population. Some states can be classified as high income states. Some can be classified as upper middle income states, others lower middle income states, others low income states. And so just so you know, states vary in terms of their economic importance. And you are aware that the amount of cash that you control also determines your influence globally. Okay, whatever you seek to do, it is through resources that the resources you command that will make you execute your policies and plan. Okay, so and it also determines the control you have in the international arena. It determines your international significance. So your military might, your economic might, or will have implication on your international significance. Take the United Nations establishment. Some have veto powers, others do not have. All these are there. Now, states also vary in terms of the extent to which they can control their territory. Okay, so you see, we mentioned that states have territories and then their government control the territory. But at independence, some states had territories, but with time, they have not demonstrated the capacity to control their entire territory. So although at law, they have that territory, but in practice, if you go there today, they are not able to exert their sovereignty over the entire territory. Now, take Ghana, for example. Ghana, when you take the map or take Ghana's territory, who is in charge of Ghana? Yes, who controls Ghana? Yes, who controls Ghana? Yes. Sheriff.
The government.
Yes, and the government is headed by who?
The president.
The president. Okay, the president. And you see, the state of Ghana, the territory, is divided into what we call MMDAs, Metropolitan, Municipal, and District Assemblies, over 200 of them. And the president, because he has the power, he has appointed people to represent him in the various MMDAs. And those that he has duly appointed in the various MMDAs, they are in charge of the security of those areas. If it is a district, we have the DCE, who is representing the president. And the DCE is in charge of the District Security Council, DISEC. If it is a municipality, you have the MCE in charge of Municipal Security Council, MUSEC. If it is a metropolitan area like AMA, TMA, you have the mayor in charge of the Security Council. And they all report to the president. That tells you that the state headed by the president, who is the head of state. So now you see the head of state, who has what? Appointees all over, controls the entire territory of the state called Ghana. But take another state called Somalia. At independence, Somalia was handed down a large territory. Somalia, the map looks like 7. You know how 7 looks like?
Yes.
The map looks like 7. But today, if you go to Somalia, the state of Somalia, the government of Somalia cannot control the entire territory. It is occupying something like 1/3 or even less than 1/3 of the entire territory. The government controls the capital and some few adjoining areas. Rebels are controlling a huge chunk of the territory, and the area controlled by the rebels and the area controlled by the state. So, I mean, the space in between these two territories, we call it a buffer area. And you have a joint AU, UN, sometimes ECOWAS forces patrolling this buffer area. So you see, one territory, you have the state of Somalia on one hand, you have rebels controlling some parts, you have joint AU, UN, ECOWAS forces also controlling some parts, and then you also have a part of it forming a different state altogether. So within the territory, there is another state formed by the declarative theory of statehood. They have declared a state within Somalia. We call it Somaliland. Okay, so Somaliland is a de facto state formed through the declarative theory of statehood, and they are found within Somalia. So clearly, the state of Somalia is incapable of exerting its sovereignty over its entire territory. And so, if you are comparing states, you should know those that are able to even exert their sovereignty over their entire territory. There was a question here. Let me see. Where is it? Where, well, hey, there are a series of questions here. Hey, my dear friends, but sometimes you have to draw my attention and then ask. According to Hobbes, the social contract theory, states came to being through social contract. So I think that how the state came to be, which according to the constitutive theory, it shouldn't be. Ella, what are you trying to say? Do you want to throw more lights?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Please, I asked a question and they started laughing. That's why I deleted it.
Because I was looking for that question. What was the question? Please ask it.
I asked if other states has to recognize the state for it to become a state, then how did the first states came into existence according to the constitutive theory?
Which first state?
The first ever state.
Okay, I get you. But we don't have something like first ever states.
Okay.
When you look at the formation of states, okay, they were formed in an era. And so then they will relate among each other. They will trade amongst each other. Okay, so there was that for recognition, right?
Okay, sir.
So you look at it in that way. So that the relations amongst them, and all this trading amongst them, diplomatic relations, and that is why the recognition became more important. So if you are a state and even nobody even recognizes you, they are not dealing with you. Hey, Charlie, now am I a state? Nobody is even recognized, and so the constitutive theory is what is very important. Samuel also.
Please, a question.
Yes.
Okay, so let's say you see this what's the name? The voter land where Kwame Nkrumah later on, I don't know how to put it.
Transvoter Togoland.
Yeah. You see that area? Let's say if it's a state like currently, but refuses to gain international recognition. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I want you to land or conclude.
Okay. And then this constitutional whatever is saying that their criteria, they don't qualify to be a state. But this state is saying that they are state. That means when they are doing something that is globally affecting us, as in the world as a whole, they don't have any right to interfere with them since they think they are not state. I don't know if you get my question.
So it is not easy for you to even say you are a state by the declarative theory. Okay. For example, look at the activities of this the old man who died. What was his name? Who wanted to do some separatist sort movements in Ghana? What was the name of the group? Sheriff, military might. No, it's not. It's not a criteria. There are certain states that even depend on other states for their protection. Yeah, there are some states that depend on other states for their protection, but military might is a very important element because it is what even protects your sovereignty. Okay, so I understand your angle. Very important. Now, there were a group of people who wanted to create a separate state in Ghana. Are you not aware of that thing? How do we call them? What was their name? Eh?
For
You forgotten? You people, you don't follow news.
Are you referring to, are you
Western
referring to
Togoland.
the voters secessionist group,
Yes, that one. What's the name?
Western Togoland?
Western Togoland. Good. They even designed their own flag and what have you. Now, this activity, the state of Ghana will not agree. So it's not even easy for you to become a state through the declarative theory, like the example you were giving, that the Togoland. So the state of Ghana is formed by the constitution, and the constitution, maps out the territory of Ghana. And so any entity that will want to take part of Ghana's territory to say you are a state, you are flouting the constitution. And the state of Ghana will exert its force over you. Okay? Every force that it has. And let's take what Max Weber's definition. Let me go back to Max Weber. The state is a human community that claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. And so the state of Ghana will not allow you every other means that it will use, including legitimate use of physical force, it will use to coil your activity. It will not allow you to simply say you have declared a state. No. Do you understand that? So unless even, maybe through war, you are able to assert, okay, your might, your military might over the state of Ghana, then you can declare that area as no-go zone for the state. Then you declare something. Do you understand what it means? So if you go to Nigeria, Nigeria is a federal system. Some states have attempted to secede, which have brought about what you call the Biafran War. The Biafran War. So if a state would want to secede from the state of Nigeria, no longer wants to be part of Nigeria, but will want to declare as a state, no, the state of Nigeria will not allow you. Unless maybe through war you conquer them or through some other arbitration, but states will not, relinquish their right over their territory. No, it's not easy that way. Otherwise, many territories, many